Hello and welcome in a new year into 2023. Happy New Year to everybody. Welcome, Joel, to this webinar. I'm really excited to do this very first webinar in 2023 with you, Joel. Joel from Portugal, Joel Teles. I hope everybody can hear me. Is everything okay? Yes, okay, very good. So let me start. Before I give the word to Joel, I would like to take the chance to introduce you to the matrix implant system. I think there's a lot of participants here which did not see exactly how this matrix implant system with no abutment and no cementation works. And so I will give the word to Joel for our really exciting topic in a bit. It is like this. We have here in the Zoom, we have the possibilities to ask questions. So you can always, in your toolbar on the top, you can ask questions. I will moderate these questions. And by the way, my name is Holger Kast. I'm the head of training education at TRI, and I will moderate these questions you have during Joel's presentation to Joel. Some I will maybe do directly, and others we can have at the end of the presentation question and answer session. And so that's the rules. And if there is not all questions answered, it's always possible to write us an email, but we will also send you the not answered questions later on. So let me start. Today we're talking especially about the matrix system with Joel. Joel is one of the first person in the world who starts to place this very first digital implant, and it's called the matrix implant. And you can see it already on this picture here. It's a unique inner connection, which is based on digital knowledge and based on digital technology. It is without the use of an abutment. We don't need the cementation anymore, and we have absolutely no limits with the matrix implant system. So how we start as TRI dental implant company, how we start this journey. It is already some years ago when we said, like, okay, we have here really an old world of implants. As you know them all, you use them every day with hexagon connection, conical connections, deep connections, and so on. All these connections are more or less created many years ago. When there was no CAD/CAM, as you see it on the right side, the new world, when there was no CAD/CAM, when there was no 3D printing systems in the markets, and there was also no zirconia used in the prosthetic creating of tooth on implants. And so what we did, what we have here is a mismatch between this old and the new world, because these connections are not made for these new techniques like milling or 3D printing. The connections are deep, they have sharp corners, and that's why the zirconia does not like this. So what the markets on all implant systems did is we created tie bases. You see here, just like I took a picture, when you design with the new world, with CAD/CAM technology, you design a crown on top of a tie base, which you see here, and you have to cement it. But the cementation is always, even it's outside, it's always a weak point of these tie bases. And you can create problems with the new world of milling and the old world of implants. We connect this with these tie bases. You can see that here a little bit better on the picture. And there's still certain situations where you can understand or see that the outcome is not very perfect. So there's limits in designs, there's gray shinings because we have titanium underneath this then beautiful zirconia CAD/CAM designed and milled crowns on top of it. We have cement gaps, which can create high risk of bone loss and tissue inflamed tissue and so on. And that's how we actually design in our days CAD/CAM based prosthetic on top of implants. We use these tie bases. So there's certain studies slowly done because the tie bases are not too long in the market, and it's very interesting. And you just can take a picture here. This is a study done in the university in Zurich and with Hemmerle and Professor Ronnie Jung, where it's the first time that they cemented, and you see that on this picture, that it's cemented as it is used on a tie base, a crown, and you see here it's nicely cleaned more or less. But anyways, you see here a cement gap, and it's full of cementation, and they aged it in thermomechanical aging time of 5 years. And then you see the same situation after 5 years, you have huge gaps here. So that's the reality. And I think everybody of you who are using tie bases have had the loss of a cemented crown on top of a tie base. We have this all the time because of certain situations. When you go more for detailed into a zoom picture of this cementation gap here, you can see this is the reality. You have here the cement rest of cementation, and we have big gaps, and the mobility of this crown cemented on a tie base is always there. And that's why or before I say why it's better to use a matrix, you see here, this is a picture just like of a cemented crown outside the patient's mouth after the use in the patient's mouth, and then actually to an implant loss. But you see here we have always big chippings, we have big gaps, and this is more or less the reality which we have in the patient's mouth every day. Here I just added 2 X-rays, and you can see here an X-ray on a tie base. And what happens? It just like gives you some thoughts in before I pass the word to Joel. So what happens if the approximal contact points are really strong and you screw retain with 20 to 30 Newton the tie base bonded crown into the implant? You can already start having a gap between or lose the bonding between crown and tie base before the patient goes out of your chair and of the dental chair, and so you have already some problems caused only by screw retaining these tie bases into the patient's mouth. We have always 2 gaps, so we have a connection from abutment into implant, and we have this cemented gap which I just described. And just to show you this, here on top we have the first X-ray here in our presentation today from matrix implant crown, and you see already on this picture what advantages has. First of all, this emergence profile of our multi-level matrix implant, and then this smooth homogeneous emergence profile, which gives you no limits in creating emergence profile with the matrix system. And I think that the picture shows already the big advantages of clean and smooth surfaces and emergence profiles in combination with the matrix system. So before I pass the word, it's just like that I want to tell you also that there is the technique which we created on the matrix is based on CAD/CAM technology. So here we have a drill which is used to mill a crown on top of the tie base, and you see here the connect, and on top of the matrix, so excuse me, you see the matrix connection is really round designed, it's very smooth, and so any milling machine, after it's certified by TRI through our certification process, is able to mill the perfect connection into this matrix connection where we talk about today. We also created for the dental technicians and the milling machines, we created certain milling strategies, which we implement always when you create an STL file and you mill the STL file as a crown or as a 3-unit bridge or even a full arch, what Joel is going to show. We implement in the milling machines these milling strategies, and the milling strategies are used to mill the perfect connection of the matrix. This is a not sintered zirconia crown. You see here, this is milled by STL file. It's still a little bit rough the surface because it's just milled by STL file. And this part, the connection part, is perfectly milled with the matrix TRI or with the matrix milling strategies. And this is what any dental technician who is certified to mill the TRI matrix system and the machines are certified can be reached, and then this connection is absolutely perfectly and accurate. This is crowns, how they look when they come out of the milling machine and out of the sinter oven. And this is, for example, just to open your mind what you can do. And I know Joel will start now to explain you emergence profile, soft tissue management is very important, especially in the aesthetic zones. We can do the analog and we can do that digitally. And this is fully digitally designed, no abutments, screw retained into the implant and polished zirconia in this case, which is really nice for the soft tissue management. And here's just like to pass really the word now to Joel. This is more or less an animation where you can see the big advantages of a multi-level implant perfectly designed for the aesthetic zone. You have different shapes and different width of the implant, and this emergence profile allows you to place the implant in this area, little subcrystal, and you can reach 2 years follow-up. That's also a topic of Joel today. 2 years results with this different diameter implant with this emergence profile as a perfectly shaped pink anodized emergence profile of the multi-level implant. And so this is a case Joel will show you. I think, Joel, now it's time to pass the word to you. I will get you as a host. We talk about the matrix implant system. And at the end of the presentation of Joel, we're going to share a special offer for the webinar participants to our course, which takes place on the 2nd and 3rd of February. So please stay with us until the end of the presentation today. We have a great course going on, a 2-day course in Grindelwald. You can see here the beautiful winter escape pictures of Grindelwald. You can take a picture of this QR code, and at the end, we will share with you a special code which you have to type in that you get a 10% offer, special offer, 10% off the normal price. So Joel, let's start with your presentation. Let me make you as a host. It's already done. You can share your screen, please, and start with your presentation. Hello, Joel. Can we hear you?
Hello, everybody. Yes, let me share my screen so that I can start. Do you see my screen now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
So again, just for the participants, if you have questions, just type them in the question field. I will moderate them during the presentation or after the presentation. So the topic is really from analog to digital, and we have only an hour together. Remember, if you are interested to go really from single crown to full arch restorations with the matrix, you should participate on the 2nd and 3rd of February in Grindelwald, Switzerland with us. So now we see everything. Let's start, Joel. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here again with you. The point with this webinar is to show you a little bit what this matrix concept changed in my perspective, clinical perspective, when doing implants. Mainly talking about aesthetics and creating emergence profiles, the things that I love doing, that I'm obsessed with doing, and what this changed in my life. So the first thing I want to tell you is that everybody in my clinic, my team, are all prepared to, whenever tooth needs to be extracted, they don't touch it until I get to see it, because nowadays immediate implant is more than 90% of what we do. We don't extract the tooth anymore and wait for the healing and go in a second time. Most of the scenarios, the majority of them, we do immediate implants. And there's a lot of articles that you can search for that will explain why this is very important. You got this Lars Schropp article from 2003 that shows you what happens as soon as you extract tooth out. So it's very important to understand this and to realize that it's way better to maintain what's there than to try to regain it later. Of course, not all the scenarios are like this. and the whens basically resume to whenever there's sufficient basal bone left, you can do immediate implants. And the boundaries are getting thinner and thinner and thinner. Nowadays, there are cases that in 4 years' time, I would never do an immediate implant, that nowadays I'm placing immediate implants. So it's very important to understand that we can that we should try to push forward that boundary of when we do immediate and when we do not do immediate. This is a very interesting article from Khan as well that you should all read about. So talking about tissue management. My protocols for many years now were that I would immediately place the implant, and then I would do an customized healing abutment, trying to mimic all that profile and keep tissue, giving the right inputs to tissue to stay in place. And this I've been doing for many years now, using titanium buttons and later on PICC abutments, which I prefer, and they're easier to work around. And I would get fairly good results. This is a 3 months post-op of a case I did with TRI. And you can see in the images above, in the x-rays, that it was kind of a tricky situation because we have very limited height of that bone. And it's easier to understand that if you were to extract those tooth and wait, you will end up with sinus lift after a few months' time. So it's, like I told you, way better to do immediate and push the boundary than to later have bigger problems to solve. So this is the results of tissue after 3 months. Beautiful emergence profiles, papilla in place. And I don't know why my presentation blocked. You get to see me? Olga, are you there?
Yes, we can see you, and everything is okay. You should just like...
No, it's not working. I don't know what's happening. It blocked. I'm not no longer
out of the
control.
Go please out of the...
No, I'm no longer in control. I cannot even close the presentation.
That's not good.
Not really. I don't know what's happening. Did you change any of the settings?
No. Now
wait.
Something you can
okay,
move. Now
something went wrong, but it went. Okay.
Okay, continue, please. Thank you.
Okay, so 5 years follow-up, and you can see that the bone is absolutely stable, showing that we did everything right. We place the implants at the right depth. We do all the maths correctly. We will talk a little bit about this later. These customized healing abutments work well. The tissue was looking good, and this is the crowns after 5 years. So everything looks okay. This is a success case, and we can talk all day about success case, but the things Olga talk about, the cementation lines, that was always on my mind. And in a static zone, this is even more important than in molar sites. So, for instance, in the static zone, I would select accordingly to José Carlos Rosa, and you have this article that will show that the width of the implant. I would do everything like you see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, placing the implant in the right prosthetic positioning near the palatal wall, and fill the gap using the double trajectory technique that you all know. This still is what I do. Because surgery doesn't change, surgery is surgery, and we would aim for the ideal restoration positioning, placing our implant in that spot, like you see here on the CT scan image. And then I would go and reconstruct a provisional restoration, and this took me some time to do, and it's chairside procedure. And it takes you some time to understand all this the way to shape it, how you need to do it, to be sure that you polish it very well, everything that goes inside tissue. So this takes time, okay? It works, but it takes a lot of time and effort, and you need to have trained hands to be able to do a chairside and create beautiful provisional restorations for your patient. And I was following the article of Juan that you all, I'm quite sure, are familiar with. So I would create and design these contours, and those would give the information for my tissue for where I want it to be in the end of the case. And so if you did all of this correct, in the end, you would have beautiful emergence profile, papilla in place and ready to be restored. And as at this point, everything is analog. I was doing this every single time. If it was a molar or a static zone, the principles are the same. So I would then transfer the soft tissue using this individualized impression copying. It's a very easy technique described many years ago, I think, from Pedro Peña Martinez. And I did the impression, and only then, after this impression, I would get into the virtual world. Okay, so absolutely analog up to this point, and only then, using a bench scan, we would start in the virtual world and working CAD/CAM. Okay, so always this mismatch in between these two worlds, because in the end, I would get these beautiful restorations, zirconia, really well polished, really thin cementation lines, but always with one thing. I would always have to select where to put that cementation line, 0.7 or 2 millimeters. And I would not be able to mimic one-to-one what I've created for several months, always by proximity. So I would always compromise. And that's the thing with the tie bases, because the tie bases are the middle guy. The tie bases are something that was created to solve a problem, which is this mismatch in between the virtual world and the analog world, you know, because implants were made to be analog all these years, and the restorations evolved to something virtual. And the tie bases are just something that the industry needed to create to be able to mix these two worlds together. And you have to remember that they have several limits. They were better now than they were back in the day when I started using them. They were very bad. But now you have to always the same width. The selection in heights, it's always normally millimeter each time. So you always have to compromise. The beginning of the tie base is always the same shape. So if you put it above, that beautiful emergence profile you created somehow is not a match anymore. You have this guy in between what you created and that what you can get now. So as you can see, problems add up. So what's the alternative? What did you have as an alternative? Up to this moment, we had nothing until this came along. So Matrix came, and as soon as I understood what was going on with Matrix and our conversations begin a few years back, I understood what benefits this could bring us for someone like me that was always trying to aim for the perfect emergence profile, trying to create papilla in place, and that was always having some compromises in between because of this mismatch of worlds. And the first thing that struck me was this macro geometry. And this is something that sometimes is under-evaluated, because macro geometry in an implant is key, okay? And without even start talking about this very clever connection, this macro geometry of this implant and that concavity that he has on the most important part that we don't want to be making pressure on bone or our tissue is key for our success. So as soon as I understood this hybrid system, this hybrid implant and this macro geometry, it made all the sense in the world to me, even without starting to think about the connection, which is an added bonus. So it's very easy to control the implant depth. That concave and polished neck is perfect, so that we can adjust the depthness of that implant. It's anodized, and that's very good for bone, and you will see in the x-rays after in the presentation. And then from here above, we can design everything we want one by one from what we've created during the healing time. And that is very important. And in the end, due to this connection, no cement, no abutment. And so we no longer have to select where we put our cementation line, above or deep inside our tissue. There's no longer this question, only one gap, and that's a gap that we can see through the studies we've made. It's even more precise than the tie bases are when connected to our implants. The milling is better than what we get from the fabric. And this is very interesting as well. So in the beginning, this was called the tissue level implant. and TRI changed it to multi-level implant, which make a lot more sense because actually we're not using this as a tissue level implant. So let's see this case. This was the first case I ever made on matrix, and this was a molecyte, and we had a very thin tissue, 1.5 millimeters, lack of keratinized tissue. So we had some problems to solve, and this was the first time I tried this matrix. And what I did is this. Always you need to think that you have to have 4 millimeters of tissue height to have space to create your emergence profile and to have stable horizontal tissue. So this 4 millimeter rule is very important that you understand. And when I did the math, I realized that my implant need to be below the crestal bone. So what I did is cut bone to save bone. I reshape the bone. I create this scalloped osteotomy that you see here, because in the end, my implant is beneath the peaks of bone, because that's the right height I needed to be to have 4 millimeters. And remember, it's 4 millimeters to the thread, not to the connection. So when you talk about the depthness of your implant, it always depends on the system. It always depends on the microgeometry of the implant. And that's why I really like this hybrid system, this multi-level implant. Because of, like I told you, the easy control of the implant head, the concave shape, the anodized polished neck, all of these variables are very important to the outcomes that we're getting. And so by doing this, this was the first case. I was still doing this analog way to control things, but I created an individualized abutment, like always, healing cap, like always I would do, by composite, very easy procedure to do, using provisional abutments that TRI have over matrix as well, and making sure that I would, with this scalloped osteotomy, have these 4 millimeters of tissue height, okay? So I would suture above, and therefore create space for clot to increase this soft tissue height, okay? And therefore create an emergence profile ready for my final restoration. I was always in that time doing this already. This scalloped osteotomy, doesn't matter if it is one tooth, if it is all the tooth, doesn't matter. Biology is not straight lines. So I always try to create papilla by reshaping what and aiming for have papilla in place, to have the soft tissue contour that I wanted. I was already doing this, but in an analog way. And so after 3 months and 1 surgery and without grafts, this is what we were getting. So now we have this beautiful emergence profile with papilla in place, big volume, keratinized tissue, and we just need to make our final restoration. And then this no longer is needed, because if you think at this moment, if I were to use a tie base, like normally I would have to use, there's no way I would mimic one-to-one this beautiful emergence profile. I would always have to compromise and select the height of the tie bases and where I want my cementation line and all the problems that we have been discussing. So if you look at this, and again, bench scan, I was doing the analog impression, you have the site for the crown ready to be to land there, and you don't have to think, you just have to mimic one-to-one, and you have everything in place. That's the that's the beauty of matrix. And in the day on the placement day, this is what we get. And see, from that situation to that situation with this stable bone, and you can actually see that the bone is above the thread, meaning that bone likes that anodized surface. And that's something very interesting as well. The behavior of bone regarding anodized surface is something very, very interesting as well that we should pay attention. So in placement day, you can see how good the tissue already look, and there's always time to improve, because now we're dealing with zirconia, polished zirconia. So this first case, that's when I start to realize that, okay, now we have the chance to think different. Now we have a chance to evolve our protocols. And this is caused by matrix. This is what matrix brought to my life as a dentist. And so nowadays, when I have a case such as this, a lost 12, I can plan the surgical part, do an intraoral scanner immediate, and ask the lab to send me a PMMA provisional restoration. If you have a milling machine indoors or a 3D printer, you can even do it indoors. So your patient is still on recovery. The provisional restoration is being prepared, and you just go screw and retain it after 2 hours time or something like that. In my cases, I don't have it indoors. I ask the lab, and the same day, in the end of the day, on the next day in the morning, I will screw retain my provisional restorations with a design that was for me ideal for this case, and that you can discuss with a dental technician, or even now you have a service from TRI that you can ask for the design, and you can mill it or 3D print it indoors. Okay, so after 2 months time in cases like this, I would have this beautiful emergence profile, always remembering scalloped osteotomy. Place the implant in the right depth. And this implant system really helps you with that. So you can see here, this is not a tissue level, even though at the beginning we were calling it that it's a multi-level. You can really play with this depth so you can create these things. And in the end, if you're pleased with the results after 2 months, you just call the lab and said, okay, so I'm pleased with the result. Please send me the final restoration. You don't even need to do nothing. Just ask for the new one. So they send me the new one. Placement day, I put it in and wait, because magic still occurring. Now it's zirconia, no longer PMMA, and zirconia is still giving the right inputs to tissue. So we wait. And after 2 years, look at this beautiful profile and how thick the tissue looks because of this zirconia, polished zirconia in touch with our tissues. And if you look at bone, remember this is the beginning of the situation with a big depression there. This is how we get, after 2 years we are. And look at bone. Okay, look how it grew on that anodized surface. Again, this anodized surface and bone and osteotes it's very interesting what we're seeing. In the beginning, we're not thinking about the bone growing there, but it is growing there. And I see this more often and more often and more often, because we're not placing the implant as a tissue level implant should be placed. We're playing with it and the depth of it. So this is what you can do on a single tooth situation, but in bridges, it's the same thing. In this case scenario here, again, reshaping doing the osteotomy scalloped to place the implants in the right depth. Normally I'll go and I measure where each implant is going, and I measure the tissue. If you look on the left side bottom image, you see that it's very thin, the tissue. It's 1 millimeter more or less. So it's a very tricky situation. Holger, you remember that when I show you these cases to you and to some very well-known colleagues, they were very disturbed by this, because they said, "This is no way this is going to work. A tissue level in such a thin tissue, no way it's going to work."
Yes, Joel, I can remember very perfectly. It was your first bigger bridge case on the matrix system, and when I see that left the lower picture there, this is like a tissue, like a paper.
A paper,
and,
yeah.
I showed it really around, and that's already almost more than 2 years ago now that you placed this, and I'm really excited that you show us now how the tissue established, especially without a cementation line,
Exactly.
with polished zirconia on the bottom, on the base, on the pontic bases, and it's really great to see this case really working as you promised us 2.5 years ago. Yes.
The idea was that I can always graft later. So I was trying to see what happens if I don't graft in this situation, because normally my normal protocol, of course, there would be to do a tissue graft on that tissue. It's so thin. But what happens if we don't? What will happen? So I will do an intraoral scanner, ask for the PMMA bridge, and just suture above it. Again, creating space for clot. See what happens to the tissue. And after 2 months, this was the situation. And so as I was pleased with it and the patient was pleased with it, I said to the lab, okay, send me the final restoration. I don't need nothing more. The shape looks good. Just send me the final ones, zirconia ones. And in one appointment, take one out, put the other. And that's it. So the surgery appointment, and the second, and in the next day putting out the bridge, and then just changing it for the final restoration.
Well, there was one question like 3 slides ago, backward, where you sutured. Can you go backward quickly?
Yes.
This is already the 2-year follow-up, but one more. Yeah, exactly. Where you suture, maybe you can quickly explain a little bit more about your suture technique here, and then why you did this in the here, please. Thank you.
The idea is very simple. The first time I began having this idea was when I did the Link Vicious course. I was in the group of his first students. When he started doing courses, I was there with him in Lithuania. And yeah, this thing where you would on top of the implant put a Geistlich membrane and then suture above it to create space for clot. And that's stuck on my mind, saying, why do I need the membrane? If I have space, if I can guarantee space there, what is going to grow there? The information is only for tissue. So I start working this idea with creating my individualized healing caps. And then I evolved to doing this with crowns. So if I pick up the tissue, you have to divide, obviously, the tissue to create to release tension from the flap, and then you can suture it above the restoration. And what will happen is it's holding down the tissue, and as it starts moving, tissue will grow there. So you'll end up with way higher tissue than at first. That's what I was doing there. And that is why, even though it was 1 millimeter tissue, after 2 years control, you can see how bone looks like. And you can see again bone growing on top of the anodized surface. And if you think about this, this was impossible if there was not sufficient tissue on top of it. So tissue now is way thicker than it was in the beginning, only because of this technique. And this is something that took no effort at all, because now it's easy. I didn't even have to prepare nothing by hand, just do an intraoral scanner and ask for the provisional restorations with the right inputs for tissue. That's it, and suture above. That's it. And
you can see between the molar and the premolar there on the X-ray. Maybe yes. Can you go back before you go in the aesthetic case?
I'll go back.
You can see there really a big bone growing even in between these two implants, not only surrounding the polished neck or the machined neck, the anodized, pink anodized neck. It's also on the base of this zirconia, polished zirconia. Do you think there is there a difference between like a tile base and cement line, and then here only polished based?
Absolutely. Again, it's all about inputs to tissue, and tissue commands the show. So if you're treating tissue right, bone will react. I was seeing that. There's no time for this, but in my courses, you know that I'll go about this. I was seeing this remineralization of bone, this bone growth over and over and over, even with the performance system that you guys have. Trying to again, just give the right input to tissue and see what happens to bone. You can always graft later. And in the full arch case that I'm about to show you, there are some conclusions in the end that I would like to share with you. They are just thoughts right now, but has to do with this that you're asking. So we'll get there, okay? So this is what changed in my life and in my protocol.
Sorry, there's another question from Jakob Zwan. Hello, Jakob, from Switzerland to Italy. He asked impression, implant placement, impression, and then what? Suture and remove them then the day after and place the temporary and suture again. That was the question.
Depending, it depends. If I was receiving it in short time, no, just wait and then put it in. It depends on your situation, where you live, where your lab is, if you have a chance to mill it indoors or print it even indoors. So it depends on the situation. If you have to receive it in the next day, yes, I would give the single sutures, and the next day, a little bit of anesthesia, open up, screw it in and suture again. Yes, that's the answer. So it depends on the situation of everybody is different. It depends on a lot of stuff. But in my case, the single restoration was in the same day. The bridge was on the next day. So yes, single points on top with normal healing caps, and then remove the suture with a little bit of anesthesia and screw over the bridge. Okay. So this case. And this case was probably my second or third case using Matrix. And that's when I decided that I was going to use this multi-level that we were still calling tissue level in this aesthetic case, because like I told you in the beginning, this macro geometry makes all the sense in the world. This shape, the external shape of this implant is key to the success of these aesthetic cases. And so I wanted to do this case, and it's a tricky case, like you can obviously see here. There's the zeniths are completely wrong. It's an aisle smile from a high demanding patient aesthetically, and this big bone and tissue defect on the 21. So I need to be careful what I was going to do this, mainly because this was my first trial with what was being called tissue level implants in aesthetic zone. I was not using tissue level in aesthetic zone for many, many years. I did that 17 years ago or something, but the results were not that good. So I stopped doing it and started using only infra bone level implants or bone level implants. And this was my first trial after many, many years in aesthetic zone using a tissue level. So I'm not going to discuss surgery a lot with you, but I did this without grafting, okay, without grafting, just a modified rolled flap with the blade going 45 degrees in the palatal, and that's it, and just one suture, and that's it. So very minimally invasive. And I did the provisional restorations the old-fashioned way using eggshell technique. And this is what I was getting after 10 weeks post-op once I removed the restoration. So already it was looking promising. There were still some things to work around. I still didn't like quite the profiles were not even one with the other. So I worked a little bit around this, but it was looking promising. And so at this moment, I did the individualized impression copying and asked for the PMMA restoration. As you can see being placed in placement day, and you can see that they're giving new inputs to tissue. That's why you see that whitish on the tissue. It's because it's making pressure where I wanted to make pressure. I've discussed this with the lab. We changed the anatomy of the restorations. And as we have freedom, we could design it exactly as the way we intended to give the right input to tissue, okay? And this was, again, one of the first trials I ever made without having to compromise with tie bases and cementation lines and all that stuff. I was aiming for exactly what I wanted. So I put the PMMA and wait 5 weeks. After 5, and this was the bone in the day, and I ask you to pay attention to this bone situation. So at this moment, we were 10 weeks time after surgery. Take a look at this X-ray. It's very important that you understand what we'll be discussing about anodized surface. This is what it was looking like after 10 weeks. So PMMA, and I waited for another 5 weeks. And this is the PMMA in place. And after 5 weeks, look at the soft tissue, the way it's way better than before. And I'm much more pleased with the emergence profiles, with the papilla. Everything looks way nicer than it looked with my handmade provisionals. And this is something that already in my mind start to think, yeah, even though we do everything right, it's way easier to control it outside than chair side trying to do it ourselves. Look at the soft tissue. And this is a milled PMMA, by the way. And at this moment, as I was pleased, just call the lab and say, okay, prepare the final restorations. They have the files. They just need to do the cutback on the original files to be able to do the veneering of the ceramic. And so I received the final restorations. This is placement day, and you can see that no longer any type of pressure is being made on the tissue. So I was pleased with the shape we get, with the zeniths, with the volume of tissue. So I just said, okay, mimic one by one, I want the same design and the final restorations. So this is the placement day. And I was very, very pleased with this. And you know, Olga, I was thrilled with the result in placement day. I said, okay, so now we have an hybrid system and a tissue level system, that's what we were calling them, that works for aesthetic zone and works very easily. It's very predictable. So I was very, very pleased. But like I told you, the story never ends here. Now, we changed this PMMA for zirconia. So let's see what happens, because zirconia is way better for tissue. And just a reminder, we came from this situation to this situation, okay? Without doing tissue graft, So we have this soft tissue enhancement and this correct emergence profile. And we waited from this situation to that situation. And look at bone now. No cement, no abutment. And bone reacts to this. Bone reacts to this zirconia in touch with it. Look how much it grew. It's amazing what I was seeing. It's mind-blowing. It's way different than what we can see and way faster than what I was seeing with this case of remineralization of bone with the performance line, way faster. Bone was reacting way better. So placement day, and let's give it some time. After 1 year, look how tissue adapt to that restorations even better. And an interesting thing, you can see that the 22 has a breakage on the mesial part. It was eating chicken wings and it broke the tooth. And the restorations, nothing happened to them. So we were having concerns about direct zirconia over the connection. We were still afraid of what might happen, and when this came along after 1 year, was okay. So if the tooth broke but not the crown, we're looking good. And this is the x-ray of the 1 year follow-up. Okay, amazing bone. Remember, scalloped osteotomy was done here as well. The only thing I didn't like that much on 1 year follow-up is that I could still see a little bit of the scar of the single suture I've made. Okay, the single point I've given to this case had a mark there on the tissue, have a little bit of scar, and I was not pleased with it. Even though the case looked good, I was not completely pleased with it. After 2 years, the scar is going away. It's looking way better. The tissue integration is beautiful. The crowns look amazing. The patient is very satisfied. And it was very easy to get to this result, and that's the point. And if it was today, I would even skip the first part. I would do an intraoral scanner in the same day, put the two PMMA crowns, and after 10 weeks time, I would change them if I was pleased with the results. So it's more cost efficient, more time efficient. I have more time for me, for my kids, and for my music. So it's a win-win situation, and you save money in between. So it's very interesting to see these results. I was very, very happy with this after 2 years. Now, this slide is just to show you that part of the magic of matrix happens when we don't get to see it. But these different definitions of zones, what's the adherence zone, what's the plaque zone or transition zone, where the glaze begins, all of this happens, and this gives inputs to the tissue. No longer you have another gap in between, no longer you have to select where to put it, and you can work around this with absolute freedom. That's key to success. That combined with the macro geometry of the matrix multi-level implant. This is, for me, key. Okay, and if you, like me, have been a student of Linkevicius and what he said, this is the perfect combination of that line of ideas. When I went to him, I was having the same troubles that he was facing, and like I told you, this was many years ago. I was one of the first groups of students that he received, and we're having the same problems. We were discussing and discovering things every day because we were using tie bases for such a short time still. And this is the perfect combination with matrix, and it solved a lot of problems. And now, just to end up, this evolved into full arches as well. This matrix philosophy ended up entering my full arch approaches as well. So this is Odette, a dear patient to me. And this is her initial situation. And the first thing I didn't like was the big volume that she had using this denture. I was not keen on it. I thought it was too much. It needs to shrink a little bit. So immediately I went into the virtual world and start to trying to discuss with the patient using these softwares that now are all available. I don't even recall what software this is that I was using back then. Try to figure out what the patient idea is for the teeth that we're planning to her. And then I did a CBTC scan using the denture that she had, just placing some dots of composite to make sure that I understood the DVO and to be able to play with it if I wanted, and to shrink the volume. You can see here that immediately I decided that I needed to shrink volume. I need to reduce those buccal corridors that were way too wide. And what I was planning with the DVO. Therefore, if I needed or did not need bone reduction, it's the combination in between this information that can be all handled via software that ends up being the plan for the surgery. In the lower jaw, I decided to reduce bone there. So we created a guide to reduce bone. And all of this is discussed in between me and the lab and the patient, and that we fully understand what we are planning for our patient. You can see there the guides, the step guides, everything, and we were doing pilot guided surgery.
Joel, quick question, because I know we go in the details of this course and we have only 7 minutes left to show things, but anyways, there was the questions. What is this little dots in the scanning, in the CBCT scan? Maybe you can show it and explain it very quickly, because I know this is really, we go into the details in our course on the 2nd and 3rd of February with this full arches and digital.
It's composite placed where the teeth end on the provisional, on the denture of the patient. So she goes to the CBCT biting her prostheses, dentures, and with little dots of composite in the end of each teeth. So that
can you show the picture just quickly again?
Yes.
These red dots you are talking about.
Yeah, it's placed right there on the teeth as you can see. So when you go to the CBCT, you can understand, and you could do this with the combination. This is how it's called, this software, I don't remember. Blue Sky something, I don't remember now. I'm always terrible with names. But what it allows you that you understand the DVO of your patient and you can work with it. You know, you have a very strong idea where you have your prosthetical space so that you can make the planning. If you do bone reduction, if you don't do bone reduction, where do you need it? Everything. And to be able to select where the smile of your patient will be, you know. So these dots are information that I need to make this virtual planning without needing proofs and wax and everything in my patient mouth. Okay, so I was using what I had, which was the dentures that the patient were using, and I used this information to involve it in the software world, in the digital world. So pilot guided with 4 anchor points. Very easy surgery to do. Then just a simple guide to allow me to understand where my emergence profiles were supposed to come out. And this is the implant in place. I was using these provisional abutments from TRI for matrix to then retain the denture, the PMMA denture that was pre-made with the holes in it. And then I would put the provisional TTAs, and with injection of acrylic, I would stack the PMMA provisional restoration to the TTAs, and always with this draw system that allows me to always put the prostheses in the exact position that we planned. In lower jaw is kind of the same thing, but added one step. It was an open flap surgery. In the upper jaw, it was flapless because I didn't need bone reduction to get to the result that I was aiming. Here, I needed bone reduction, so I did a guide for bone reduction. I did it, then used another guide to make the pilot guided perforations, and then placing the implants. In our course, I will show this in detail with videos, that it's a very, very easy surgery to do, very predictable. And again, with the draw, just attaching the TTAs to the PMMA pre-made provisional. This is the end result in the day of the surgery. And this is the X-ray of 4 months post-op. And in 4 months post-op, the patient was looking like this. And she was very pleased with the result. She was very happy. And if the patient's happy, I'm happy as well, because in the end of the day, we're working for them and for their smiles and for their confidence and for their health. So she was very pleased with the result. And this is what I saw once I removed the provisional restorations from my patient's mouth. At this moment, I would do a standard silicone impression because I would not trust intraoral scanners, and this is a discussion that we have for several years now. Intraoral scanners in full arch, and then the mistakes that they add up, and still is a struggle. But, and this is just a little bit of something that you will get to see in Grindelwald, TRI is working on something very interesting, and it's promising. Nowadays, these full arches done. This is a full arch FP1 done with matrix, and the match in between this intraoral scanning that I did and the analog is 1-to-1. So this is looking very promising. We'll have a chance to discuss this in Grindelwald. It's something new, but it's working really, really well. And so I asked for my final restorations, 2 monolithics with veneering of ceramic with a cutback, like normally I always do for aesthetics. This is the final restorations in place. And this is the 1-year follow-up. Bone looking amazing. This is the patient. And I would like to end up by telling you this. After 1.5 years, I decided to remove this restoration because we were having this discussion, me, Olga, Sandro, and other guys from TRI, that if we should or we should not remove these restorations because now they are implant level. We no longer have multi-units in between. And I always remove my, my bridges every 6 months, more or less, to clean everything, to recheck the torque, and to place it back in. So I decided I want to take it out and see. And I did that after 1.5 years in function. 2 things I want to describe to you. First, there's a lot of epithelial junction tissue against this. I removed all the screws and I was trying to remove the restoration and it wouldn't come off. It was really stuck on tissue. Once I remove it, I had to clean it really, really well to be able to take this picture that you see here. And this picture is to show you how the connections are handling 2 zirconia restorations, one against each other, after 1.5 years in function. And you can see that the connections look amazing. They look perfect. You almost don't. One thing I was looking for is if I could see the screw was leaving marks on the restorations, on the connections, but you don't get to see it there. And the thing that immediately was stuck on my mind is that probably we need a paradigm shift here. Because if I remove this, and it took a lot of strength and a lot of tissue was detached and was stuck on the restoration, meaning that tissue is attaching to this polished zirconia on the under of the restoration. So probably I will not remove this again. I will probably only check torque once in a while, but will not remove this because I will be detaching tissue every time I do. So maybe we need a paradigm shift coming from these matrix situations regarding full arches, and mainly FP1s that I'm doing nowadays with matrix. Probably I will not remove them. Probably I will only check torque. This is something that is still evolving as we speak, so I have no setup ideas, but I'm thinking that probably I will not remove them, and I want to left you with this idea. Don't want to end without talking about this guy on the right side. João Fernandes is a big part of this as well. He helped us a lot in the beginning. Most of the work you see here is from him regarding connection and designing and the milling of this provisional. So cheers to that guy. Very important in all this matrix process that we've been up to for more than three years now. And leave you with this. Okay, so if you want to get deeper knowledge about this, see more cases and understand better the surgery of these cases that I showed you, there are some very interesting things regarding this scalloped osteotomy and tissue handling. I remind you that none of those cases had tissue graft, not even the aesthetic case. So there are some tricks around these inputs to tissue. Be with us. There are not many left spots as I recall, but if you want to be with us 2 and 3 February, we will be there in Grindelwald. I heard that's a beautiful place. I'm hoping so. So join us there.
Thank you very much, Joel, for this fantastic presentation. From analog to fully digital, from a single crown on the matrix system to a full arch. And I know you have a lot of more cases to show us in your pipeline, and I'm really excited to share with you the course in Grindelwald, which you already explained here. Just remember the timing. We have now a little bit, not really time left. It's already 1 o'clock here, but there is certain questions, and I'm going to share with you. And as I promised, I will give you a code for having one of the last. I think we have 4 seats left, and you can, until tomorrow, we have a code which you can use, and you get a 10% off. Only the guys who participate here in the webinar for the course on the 2nd and 3rd of February in Grindelwald, Switzerland. Let me share my screen quickly again and get to some questions. There was one question already, and I think it was about the PIC dental, because you showed the case, and how did you or what we will show in Grindelwald, a little video to really solve problems with intraoral scanning, especially in edentulous cases. And there was one question about PIC dental, and I can answer this PIC dental question directly. We have created a connection on our matrix implant connection for PIC dental, and it is available soon. And yes, it is a possibility to really avoid problems with digital intraoral scanning. And again, for the course in Grindelwald, we have there not only different intraoral scanners, which you can a little bit test there. We have also the 3D printing possibility, which is a really big topic. It's especially in combination with the matrix system. We call it the scan and smile system, which you can really use when you have a 3D printer nowadays in your office. You are able to do a healing abutment or a crown or prosthetic, temporary prosthetic in 3D printed very quickly, chairside actually. And also we will have Armin Gierbach there with their milling machines, different milling machines there, where we test a little bit the timing between 3D printing and zirconia milling and so on. So it's a great course. I will share the code with you in a second, that you get your 10% off. But is there more questions in this moment to Joel Teles? I don't see any more questions. Only there was this PIC dental question that I already answered. And then if there is not more questions, I would like to say thank you again, Joel. We're going to see us very soon to do this fantastic 2 days course. together. And if there's more questions, you always can pass us a line. And as I promise you, please take a picture of this QR code right now, and we will offer this, I think, until tomorrow afternoon. We will offer you a 10% off. It's only for the guys who participate here. And here is the code. You can see here, use the code winter 23 and type this code in, and you get a 10% off of one of 4 last seats in Grindelwald. Again, you see not only the beautiful face of Joel Teles, you can also see the beautiful landscape of Grindelwald. And we have a nice program besides the interesting course with winter games and things to do during the night, and in the mornings. Then we have to go and do the course together. So please use this code again. And then just to wait a second. Now there's popping in 2 questions. And yeah, there was one question. It's a good question. Did you have broken zirconium in all your cases? Joel, maybe you can answer this. If
I had what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear perfectly.
Did you had broken zirconia in your cases? Did you have any failed case?
Yes, in the first restorations that we were trying out, and that's one part of the decision I made to only use the multi-level system. When I was using bone level and multi-level and trying different things, and we were working on the strategies of milling and the screws now that are available mainstream are different from what we had in the beginning. Yes, I had I think 2 breakages. One during placement, because I wasn't fully understanding how to handle these new restorations. So I had one that broke while I was placing it, and another one that broke afterwards. What I can tell you, what we learned is that we needed to change the screws, because while they were being handled on the lab, they were making pressure on the connection. So we changed there. Now we have prosthetical screws. And the other thing that we learned is that our strategies for milling the connection were not perfect.
This is really important point. You have to understand that Joel was in a limit market release already. As I said, one of the first guys placed the implants and restored the implants. And we have this, and I started this presentation that with these milling strategies to mill really in the perfect connection. And it's just important to understand that the matrix, only to restore the matrix, is only possible with a certified laboratory, TRI certified laboratory. Therefore, you can go on our website, and I think that's why I share now. Please, let
me just say one thing. The channels to get to the implant connection were also sometimes I was because of this math of the 4 millimeters, if I was using bone level, the channel sometimes was too high. So we had to create solutions in these very early market release trials. I was trying all these different stuff. That's why in the beginning, if I recall perfectly, I had 2 breakages. But like I showed you, and after we understood what was happening, perfect results. That's what I can tell you.
Joel, it's really on time now to say goodbye. But before we do that, I just want to say everybody who comes to the ADEC in the Dubai on the 7th and 9th of February, we will be there. I do not have the position of the booth yet, but you will find it also on the website, and you will find us there. We have we are there. We can show you the matrix more detailed in Dubai from the 7th and 9th February, right after the Joel course in Grindelwald in Switzerland. And also the EDS is in front of the doors, and we are really looking forward to see you all at the IDS in Cologne this year. And so it will take place on the 14th and 18th of March. We are always there for you. There's a lot of other courses lined up for this year in the University in Zurich and so on. And please take always a look on our really great website. And when there's more questions coming in right now, we will answer them afterwards. I will pass them via email to Joel, and I will say again, thank you for listening. And we will have soon a new webinar with in April with the Anini brothers from Italy, but the date is not 100% fixed. But just be tuned and check our website from time to time, and you will be informed of more webinars, courses, and so on. Thank you, Joel, for taking this time for this amazing outlook, and let's see you in Grindelwald very soon.
See you there, my friend.
Much, Joel.
See you there. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.